Welcome to Learn Less, Do More training series from me, Thangu, on SharePoint Crude. So, from this course, you will learn a very important concept of Crude in SharePoint for sites and lists, mostly list, using four main techniques like end user, CSOM PowerShell, REST PowerShell, and PNP PowerShell. So before you continue, make sure you can hear me, go to a quiet room, or just walk and listen, and hope you can see the screen, or at least try to listen, and have some water or sip some water or have some fruits nearby. This is me, Thangu or Thangeshwari. I've been working in Microsoft Technologies since 2006, and I've been consulting and slowly became a trainer from 2016. I've been speaking, and recently I've been writing books also in SharePoint in a different fashion. You can find them in Kindle Unlimited for free, giving search for SharePoint Pedagogy by Thangu. And you can also contact me in www.thangu.com for any consulting needs for hourly or weekly basis. When I'm free, I watch cartoons and also love watching good movies and I admire nature. So, this session is for anyone who wants to do some development in SharePoint but has not got the chance to do programming or wants to do programming and you don't have the time to learn programming. Or you might be an end user or you might be an experienced developer or just a business analyst trying to enter development, try to do, you have a lot of ideas, a lot of business logic, and you want to do that in a short time using less lines of code and without worrying too much about the installation of various tools. So the agenda for this session is to understand what is CRUD, why we are going to discuss CRUD on SharePoint with PowerShell, and what are the four techniques. We will have a look at CRUD using end user, CRUD using CSOM PowerShell, CRUD using REST PowerShell, and CRUD using PNP PowerShell. What is CRUD? It is nothing but creating, reading, updating, deleting data from a database. If you already know computer science, this must be very self-explanatory. Even otherwise, you take an object like every day you eat some food. So God creates the food and gives us to eat. So you might have some apple. So apple is created. You see the apple, it's very beautiful reddish apple. And unfortunately, people might update the apple with the sticker on that when it comes to the shop so that it comes to you and with the price tag. And then finally, after you eat, it is deleted and it goes back to the nature. So in the computer world, most of the projects revolve around CRUD. So you might be creating, reading, updating, and deleting. So I've been working for almost 10 years, and this is one of the major projects you come across. And using a web, the UI might change. You might be using a web or mobile or tablet, but behind the scenes, the logic is mostly creating, reading, or updating or deleting data. So that's all what goes behind the scenes, whatever technology you use. So why this course? One reason is because SharePoint is treated as a very powerful database by many in the real world. Many organizations use SharePoint as a good database. It is running on top of SQL, and SharePoint is a very good database, and you can easily add, and it has a very good view using list views. And personally, I feel it is actually good looking also, but unfortunately many do not like the looks and hence they try to customize the looks. But recently the looks are also on par with other apps, and most of the operations in the real world projects are around viewing data in the chart form or reading data and updating the data from the SharePoint list. And there are many ways of development in SharePoint. Coming to the history, long back we had the server-side object model, and that is outdated. And then Microsoft brought Sandbox, and I went to a project. Some people have worked for 3 months on Sandbox. Then I was called to do some change because Microsoft has recommended the add-ins or app approach. So it keeps changing again and again and again and again. The developers have to keep learning, learning, learning. And sometimes, of course, we need to keep learning. Of course, there are some courses to help you to learn the apps or add-ins, and I was helping students. And Napa, I was teaching, and our students were doing great in Napa, but unfortunately, Napa got discontinued. And now the recommended approach is SPFX, and probably Microsoft might discontinue soon. The only story is something comes out and they are just replacing that with something. So I brought this course mainly because I hope that the learning curve is not too much and you can actually jump into programming or doing the logic. You have some idea, you jump into the logic. And it's very, very simple. And PowerShell will definitely stand the test of time. Actually, I was working in SharePoint and I was forced to learn PowerShell after it was made compulsory in 2010 version for administration. And as a developer, I found it to be extremely powerful, and I've been using PowerShell for various tasks, and it's really amazing. It's extremely simple and very safe also, and the installation is not at all needed. It's mostly on coming out of box in Windows, and you can do development for both online and on-premise version. And basically, PowerShell is very helpful to generate codes also. Of course, in this course, we are not looking at JavaScript. So we can generate codes and upload them in the server if needed. And the learning curve for PowerShell is very easy. It's extremely simple and superb. So you can focus on getting your logic done, revolving on CRUD, on SharePoint objects like list libraries or users, and automate for multiple sites. So you can do the same thing again and again for multiple sites using PowerShell. So for this particular course, we will take the simple case of a garden. Assume you're going to create a simple garden site, and in the garden, you're going to store the detail of all the fruits which are growing. And we'll have a fruits list. We'll add the columns like the location of the fruits, and the items are added like the apple, orange, mango, pomegranate. And we'll update the location for apple from Washington to Australia, and we'll finally try to delete mango. So this is a very simple use case, but this can be extended. So you might be doing the same thing for user or document library. So of course the method might vary depending on the technique you use. But once you get this working, it can be applied across other objects. So you learn this, you understand this, you can apply that for the object you want using what you like. So today we will look at 4 techniques, and when you apply, make sure you choose the technique based on your comfort level. If you do not like coding at all, just go ahead for end user. SharePoint is very powerful. Without coding, a lot of things can be done. And mostly for one-time activities, just go ahead for end user. But in case you're tired of clicking, clicking, doing the same thing again and again, as a human, you get bored. You don't want to do the same clicks again and again every day. Every day, people are asking you to create the site and you have to go through the clicks again and again. It's boring. So in that case, you can automate that, write a PowerShell script, which will, and you just run the script and it is done in a single click. So, and if you, let's move on to the next step, REST. And REST, the advantage is there is just one particular code which you can download from the GitHub, which I'm showcasing. You just run the REST CRUD code. You don't need to understand the code and all, but just how to call the code, you'll be calling the function with certain parameters. So this is very powerful because you can do this for any number of objects. You have to just refer the Microsoft site for getting the appropriate URL, the parameters. Whether if it's for site, the parameter will vary. For list, the parameter will vary. Uh, and just the URL will vary. But the problem with that is you spell check is needed. If there's a small spelling error, it will not work. But if you don't want to learn different, find out the objects or different codes for each object, so you just run one code and just the parameters will vary, or how you call the method will vary based on the object you want. Next is the PNP CSON. The advantage of that is you just have to call single lines of code. You don't need to know much coding, and Microsoft has done a great job and many people have done a great job in developing PNP, and lot of things can be done with just a single line of code, be that creating sites or creating lists or updating lists or creating views or fields. A lot of things can be done with PNP CSOM. And if you want to have more power, and if you're already a coder and CSOM is the most powerful, using CSOM, you can really do almost anything. Of course, not as powerful as server-side object model, but with CSOM, you have more control. And if something is not supported by JavaScript or REST, you can take over using CSOM, and you don't need to worry about spelling. It's very simple. Almost all the methods are simple. I recommend that you try all the methods and enjoy. There is joy in coding. If you're an end user, there is definitely some joy in coding. You do some coding and you see the output work. That's really joy. And many times it might be frustrating, especially with REST because of spelling error. That's why Seesaw might be better. But you just try, and whichever gives you joy, just choose that. And once you have found out the technique which you like, then extend the CRUD operation to the object of your choice. And once you understand this, you can apply this to any technique, be that SharePoint add-in using SharePoint hosted or SharePoint framework, whatever technology Microsoft keeps sending, you can just apply that. This object model is the basic foundation. This is not going to change. So let's start off with the basic end user discussion. So let's take the case of creating a site, garden site from end user perspective. So you have to go to the site settings, site contents, or gear icon and site contents, and you go to the subsite, you create the subsite, give the name as garden, and you choose the template and choose create, and the garden is created. So for one time activity, it is nice. This is very nice. However, if you want to do it again and again, you might have to jump into coding. So much more will be shown in the demo videos. So let's move on to the next one, REST API. So this is a sample of how a REST API, how you have to call, where you have to pass the data parameters if you want to created some data, and you have to give the URL. The REST URL will start with underscore API followed by web or site and something which you get from the Microsoft site depending on the object. And then of course you need to give the site and the user and the credentials. And I've just created, I think even from Microsoft you can just get that. This is for SharePoint Online only. So just download the GitHub code from this link, REST and just run that, and after you run that you can just call the create sp object or update sp object or read sp object or delete sp object. And this is applicable for a web or a list or a site or a file, for almost all the objects. The only drawback is, for me, I found it very frustrating many times when just because of a spelling error it would not work. So example, for the garden site creation, it was not working for a very long time. So for weeks I tried, it was not working. Why finally I found that the parameters word was missing. So just make sure that you copy the exact keyword as given in the Microsoft site, and the title, the custom values will be based. For example, if you want to create the garden site, the title value will be garden. So based on your needs, you have to change the name. So, but this is very helpful when you don't like to code much. So just run this particular code, and based on the object, you have to just refer the Microsoft site and get the data parameter. That's all. Now coming to PNP. So PNP, it's very easy. You have to install the SharePoint PNP PowerShell Online one-time activity. After that, you have to connect. And once the connection is made, you can add new objects, delete new objects, update objects using new PNP web or new PNP list or new PNP view and so on and so forth. If you want to update, you can use set hyphen PNP. And if you want to delete, you have remove hyphen PNP. So this is also extremely powerful. You can just do the codes in just one line, and there's a lot of power with PNP also. So this is also highly recommended because you don't have to worry too much about the spelling. There are some little drawbacks, like if some adding list items is not working, you might just have to add a list and use the update list item. Some operation might fail. For that, alternatives are available. But overall, SharePoint PNP is really awesome. And just with one line of code, you can do a lot of operations. And finally, this is the C song, which is my personal favorite. Of course, I'm a coder, and I've been doing I like server-side coding also. Hence, I prefer the C sharp coding. Which, if you are coming from the C sharp background or have coding in the server-side background, this is really nice. Where one-time activity, you have to just download the client-side online client components SharePoint, and add the references to the DLL, and then you can create new objects, update new objects, delete new objects with just 4 or 5 lines of code. And most of the operations can be done using CSOM with ease. So, uh, so as a quick summary, we just had an introduction to how we can do CRUD in SharePoint using end user or REST or PNP or CSOM. So thank you so much for your time. Take care. Bye bye.